At the end of the Second World War, Germany lost because the Russians were the first to enter Berlin. And the Americans and the British came along. So they all met in Berlin, and the war was over. Now, what do? The Russians are Russia was a socialist country. The rest were capitalist countries. So obviously, they had to partition the country in a way that everybody will benefit. Berlin was divided into two. They built the Berlin Wall, but East Germany for Russia and West Germany for the capitalist state. But not only did the war end, but after the war was the Cold War, the ideological warfare. Each wanted to project their ideology as the best. The Russians were championing the cause of socialism, which will end up in communism. The capitalist states, the West, believed in capitalism and democracy. Now, the problems some of these new leaders in Africa had was where or with whom to align their support. And obviously, if you take a country like Ghana, because we wrestled power from a capitalist country, Kwame Nkrumah didn't think that capitalism was good for a new nation. He was a sympathizer of socialism. So he was therefore not in the good books of the West. In 1966, he published one of his books, New Colonialism, The Last Stages of Imperialism. When he published that book, the American government, who had promised to give him a loan of $25 million, cancelled the loan. Because it is a very powerful book. If you ever had the opportunity to lay your hands on it, I trust you will enjoy it so much. So, because of these sort of disagreements and ideological warfare, the CIA facilitated a coup d'etat in Ghana and took Kwame Nkrumah out of power. And I think you all agree that the country has since not been the same. It was not just Kwame Nkrumah who was taken out. Almost every Pan-African who wants to champion the cause of African unification was a target, such as Lumumba was dealt with. In 2009, the OAU met in Libya, in the town of Seti, where they decided that they had to change the organization, the OAU, to the African Union. And in that declaration, they said they wanted to speed up the process of African integration. When Gaddafi became the leader of the African Union, he also decided that it was time to unite the continent. He believed in a united Africa. He believed that we should have one military force, one central bank, and spend one currency. And he was committed to making it happen. Like Kwame Nkrumah and Nyerere, President Zuma of South Africa opposed Gaddafi. He didn't like Gaddafi at all. He said Gaddafi was intimidating them. Gaddafi wanted to be the first president of Africa, and so on and so forth, and Africa was not ready. In the end, in 2011, coincidentally, Gaddafi was killed in the same town where the African AU was established, which is the town of Seti. And so here we are. None of you here will deny the fact that 55 African countries are all non-viable states. Not a single one of them has been successful. And not a single one of them can succeed in isolation. It's just not possible. The vision that Kwame Nkrumah and Co had, we now know that they were right. The Casablanca Bloc were right. And just so we get down to brass tacks, I will once in a while use Ghana as an example because I'm a Ghanaian. And I'm not a member of any political party where you think, well, if I criticize, say something against NPP, then I am an NDC man. And if I say something against the NDC, then I am an MPP. That is not the sort of politics I'm doing as in this particular Congress. Here we're talking about Africa. The artificial boundaries that we created in Berlin, of what purpose is those boundaries to the people of Africa today? The mapping of the continent itself was imprecise. Same ethnic groups, tribes were split into two. You will have one group in this country, the other group in another country. And this is creating frontier problems for the country, for the continent. We have Eritrea and Ethiopia at each other's throats. Kenya and Uganda, even Nigeria and Cameroon. Niger and Chad, they are all fighting over boundary disputes. Boundaries that we didn't create. So we've come to accept these artificial boundaries as if they were the best thing to happen to us. And in the process, as we speak, it's almost as if all the African leaders we have now think we have arrived at our destination. They talk about politics as if Ghana is different from Nigeria, Nigeria is different from South Africa, and South Africa is different from Ivory Coast. And what we have, because there's a lack of unity and a lack of vision, we have nothing but corruption. Our schools, our education system, for example, has nothing to do with our economic development. The sort of curriculum we run has no connection with the needs of the country that we live in. And for that matter, we keep producing graduates who have no jobs to do. The hospitals are ill-equipped. And all over, wherever you look, the problems are just so enormous. Almost all the countries are submerged in debt. Where and how far does the Ghanaian cedi travel? Aflao border is the end, or Elibu. It doesn't go anywhere beyond that. How can such a currency compete with other international currencies? The dollar keeps bullying it. When Donald Trump wakes up and he's happy, then the dollar comes down. When he's unhappy, then the dollar is up there. The problem is just not possible. You take Nigeria, where does the Naira go? How far can the Naira travel? After Nigeria, it is useless. So, we are saying that Kwame Nkrumah and Co were right. We need a federal African government. We need one single country, one military force, one currency, and a single government. And I will break it down as I go along. I'll tell you why. You know, the white man is very smart. And what they did is whole business. Is to make the black man think there's nothing good in him and he's good for nothing. There's nothing good in Africa. The African cannot achieve anything. They elevated everything white above the black one. Everything. Even our gods were inferior to their gods. And I'm sure most of you don't know this, but their gods have now been elevated to planets. Those of you who study geography, you wouldn't have known that when you talk about the 9 planets, we're actually talking about gods. European idols, yes. That's what they are. Mercury is the god of communication. Venus is the god of love. Mars is not called the red planet for nothing. It is the god of war. That is the European god of war. Jupiter, the Greeks called him Zeus. He was the head of all the gods. He was their leader. He's the god of the sky. He's in charge of thunder and everything that happens in the sky. The Greeks called him Jupiter, and that is why the planet Jupiter is the largest of all the planets. Neptune is called the blue planet because Neptune, the Greeks called Neptune Poseidon. Poseidon is the god of the sea. It is his wife that people call Rami Water. Yes. I have been to Greece. I've traveled around the whole of Greece. And the temples are there. It's not a myth. And all these gods, we are now calling planets, in Europe at that time, lived on the mountain, Mountain Olympus. They lived on the top of Mountain Olympus. The Mountain Olympus is still there. I was in Olympia. And underneath, at the base of Mountain Olympus, in Olympia, is where every 4 years the Greeks will gather to celebrate a festival for their gods, so that the gods can watch them. They wrestle, they do all sorts of sporting things. That is how the Olympic Games started. And today it's a global event. It started at the base of Mountain Olympus. That site is still there as we speak. Apollo was the god of prophecy, and he was in charge of music and poetry. That is why very often you hear about Apollo Theater. That's how it came about. And in those days, in the olden days, those that did the competition, those that competed among themselves, everybody wants to win. So you need to make sacrifices to the god of victory. The god of victory is called Nike. That is why you have Nike sportswear today. Nike is the Greek god of victory. The Romans called her Victoria. So that is how the name Victoria came about. So you see, that is, but now, when we talk about Mercury or Venus or whatever, you look at it as if it is something strange. It isn't. In the olden days, in the land of Greek, the Greeks call the earth, they call it G. It spells G. Because the earth was called GE, those that studied the distance on the earth, which is metric, are called geometricians. That's how geometry came about. Those that studied the bones of the earth, which are the rocks, are called geologists. Now, an image or a picture in Greek is called graph. So those that studied the picture of the earth were called geographers. That's how the names came about. So when you talk about geography, you're simply talking about the image of the earth. You talk about geology, you're talking about the bones of the earth, the rocks buried underneath the earth. And they believed in life after death as well. So we had one of their greatest gods is called Hades. He was in charge, he's the god of the afterlife, in the darkness, the dark world. All these things are not any different from our own culture and beliefs. But what they've done is just to sort of cook them in such a way that they look different. And so for an African like yourselves in Russia, you always have to work twice as hard as anybody else, because you come to this country, you have to first study the Russian language before you start studying whatever subject you want to study. So in everything you do, you're already at a disadvantage. To date, when I talked about misplaced priorities, the last time I was in Ghana, I was happy because in December when I arrived, Terminal 3, a very beautiful airport, a European standard airport. And I'm sure you will all agree it costed millions of dollars to construct. This terminal is built next to an existing terminal, which is working just fine. There's nothing wrong with that terminal. What baffles me is in a country that has no airline. We have no airline. Right? We are putting up a terminal, a European standard terminal, in a country that has no airline at all. We have a Ministry of Transport. This Ministry of Transport has existed since I was born. And the Ministry of Transport employs thousands of people. Thousands of people. In a country where you can't even get a shuttle bus from Kotoka Airport to the city center. We have no shipping line. We have no railway lines. They don't exist, not even a tram. And then we have a Ministry of Transport. So you tell me, every day they go to work, what sort of decisions are they taking on behalf of the country and getting paid for it? What decisions? Because I live in a country where if I pay my road tax, I am happy to do it. I'm happy to do it because I see the results. I know where the money goes. I know the Minister for Transport is working. One day I closed from my office, and usually I work very late. And I was driving home. It's about 30 minutes from my office, or on the motorway. And I was very tired. It was a long day. I kept driving, and then a policeman waved me to pull over. So I was thinking, wow, Ryder, this man is just stopping. I want to go home and eat my fufu. So I stopped, and then the man came along. And I know that in the UK, if a policeman stops you, then there's something wrong. So when he came along, I rolled down my window, and I said, "Officer, how can I help you?" And he says, "Oh, yes, you can help me. Just switch on your lights. Just turn on your headlights." So I said, "Oh, sorry." So I turned on the headlights. All this time I was driving from my office, my headlights were off. I didn't realize it because the street lights is so bright. I was just going. I could see wherever I was going. So why should I complain when I pay my road tax? The road is smooth. The street is paved with street lights. So that is it. We have a poor maintenance culture. In a country where schools, children have no tables and chairs to sit on, you are putting out fancy terminals. For who? How many Ghanaians actually patronize the airport? How many Ghanaians travel overseas in and out? So whom did we build it for? How much income is it bringing? In the UK, there is always a problem between the government and its citizens because of expansions of the Heathrow Airport. Heathrow Airport is one of the busiest in the world. It's huge. Terminal 1, Terminal 2, Terminal 3, Terminal 4, Terminal 5. And they still want to expand. That's just Heathrow Airport. We still have other airports. We have the London City Airport. We have Stansted Airport, still in London. They are all very busy. So when the government says, I want to add an additional terminal, you know what he's talking about because it is bringing in revenue. But Ghana, our beloved country. So, you see, this is the reason why we are advocating for a united Africa. Now, the Pan-African Federalist Movement, we are saying that there is everything wrong with the African governments. Recently, I was in Berlin, and my friend and I walked past the Russian embassy in Berlin. If you see the Russian embassy, you know they mean business. It's massive. A very huge building. Now go and look for the African embassies. They are all tiny, tiny embassies. These are for the poorest countries in the world. You go to a US embassy and it's a massive building. As we speak, as you and I speak today, we have approximately 10,368 diplomatic missions, African diplomatic missions around the world. And the truth is, they don't do anything. I know my boss is sitting right here. But I tell you this, apart from managing your scholarships, apart from issuing visas and replacing your lost passports, what is it that they cannot do together? What do we need 55 African embassies in Moscow for? And what even annoys me most is the fact that my passport, my beautiful Ghanaian passport, that used to have the coat of arms, has now been changed. Sorry.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Wow.
If you give me 10 minutes, thank you. What will the passport has now been changed? It's now some green passport, and we have the ECOWAS coat of arms at the front, and the Ghanaian Eagle coat of arms is at the back, right?
Yes.
Now all these people have decided to change the passports of West Africans, and yet they don't see the need to have an ECOWAS mission in every country. What is the point in giving me an ECOWAS passport? What I want to see is one single mission, an embassy, an African embassy. That is what I want to see. A massive African embassy. And you can imagine how much money the continent will save if we only have 192 embassies across the world. As long as you're an African and you want a visa, go to the African house. We will have enough money to actually buy the land. We'll have enough money not just to have an African embassy, but within the embassy itself. We can have our libraries. We can even, in Berlin, what I noticed, at the very end of the Russian embassy is the office of Aeroflot. So yes, say we have an African embassy, just one single embassy. You want to go to Africa, you want an African visa, go to the African embassy. You want a passport, go to the African embassy. You want to do business with Africa, go to the African embassy. We could have one of the largest embassies anywhere in the world. And what is more, we could have a library or a research center within the embassies. We could even have accommodation facilities within the embassies. Our diplomats don't need to stay in hotels. We will have, even the cost of managing the embassies would be less because the fleet of vehicles is at the disposal of everybody at the embassy. Now, you have here a small Ghana embassy, you have the Nigerians, you have the Togolese, you have this, what for? We don't need that. We are saying that we need 192 missions. Now, one other area that I would talk about is, and not just these missions. We say we need one military force in Africa. Look, today we have, every country in Africa has a military force. What do the soldiers do? What are they doing? The Nigerian military could not even deal with Boko Haram. So what is their use? Apart from peacekeeping operations. Peacekeeping operations, because it's only when the United Nations needs them. And that is when they make some money. Now, it is very dangerous, extremely dangerous, if you analyze geopolitics and know the way these people operate. The day they will successfully set one government against another government. At the moment, what they do is, for example, the French, if you are being naughty as a president, they will get the military to step in and have a coup d'etat and take you off. So the confusion is always contained within a particular country, and the AU has a non-interference policy. They don't interfere in each other's internal affairs. So if there's a problem in Ghana, the AU can't interfere. The best they can do is send peacekeeping mission force to help contain the situation, as it happened in Liberia and Sierra Leone. But you might be thinking that this only happened, or this is only capable of happening within the particular country. But the day the neo-colonialists will decide to set one country, one African country against another African country, will be the beginning of the end of Africa. We will tear each other down. So we are saying we need a unified military command, properly trained to defend Africa, period. We don't need 55 different military forces doing nothing. Whenever you turn your attention, you will see that we are actually better off together than in our current situation. I hate because I've traveled more than 3/4 of the world. And I'll tell you, there are very few countries I haven't seen. You go to any country. Recently, I was in Jordan to travel around that area. When I got to Jordan, I took a visa from the Jordan embassy in London before embarking on my journey. When we arrived in Jordan, we had on the plane. I went to Austria, so most of the people that traveled on the flight were Austrian citizens and other EU citizens carrying their EU passports. When we got to Jordan, all of them, within 5 minutes, everybody had left immigration. I was the only one left with my Ghanaian passport. And a guy came to me and said, "Oh, come, we want to talk to you." So I went to see whoever was in charge. And I said, he said, "What is it?" He said, "So, where are you coming from?" I said, "I'm coming from London." "Where do you live?" I said, "I live in London." "What are you coming to do in Jordan?" He said, "I'm coming for tourists." "Okay, go." That was it. So, and obviously it hurts that out of the lot, I was the only one singled out. Jordan. I did what I was doing in Jordan, traveled around Jordan, visited all the interesting places. If you don't know, we have a place we call Mount Nebo. Mount Nebo is where Moses stood to see the promised land. There are a lot of interesting attractions there. The oldest church is actually in Jordan, and they have this place called Petra and the Dead Sea. After my tour, I decided to continue my journey to Israel. But this time I decided to go by road. And so I got to the Israeli border, and I can understand because I was just a single black man amongst a lot of people. A lady there also started asking me why I was traveling alone. And I asked her, well, then she can join me. So then she says, "Okay, take your passport and go." This is what we blacks have to go through. It is not right. And nobody is ever going to change it for us. To reinstall our integrity and our dignity, we need to come together. It is the only way forward. There is so much I would have loved to tell you today. But I've been told I have 10 minutes. Is it still 10 minutes? 5 minutes. Well, some of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I can't, but I will just summarize a few of them. I went to Egypt, and southern Egypt, Nubia, is where we have the blacks. All the pharaohs in Egypt were blacks. The northern part of North Africa was occupied by the Tuaregs and the Berbers. What you see today, the Egyptians and those people you see today, only came there during the Islamic invasions, during the spread of Islam. The pharaohs were blacks. It was the blacks that constructed the pyramids. It is a fact. And I now know why, when in the days of Jesus Christ, when his life was threatened, the angel told the mother to take him to where? To Egypt, because that is where they can actually hide him, because he looks like them. When I went to Bethlehem to where the Christ was born. And I don't have this information. If you want it, I will show you. Sorry? Right. If you get to the entrance to where Jesus was born, the Greeks have actually placed a picture of him and his mother. And there is a black woman and a black child. You can verify that. I have the pictures. Yeah. But that is something for another day. To cut my long story short, the Pan-African Federalist movement, we say we want to unite Africa. We are tired. Africa can never develop as separate states. It's not possible. As long as we remain divided, we remain at the mercy of the colonialists. They will continue to colonize us, control our thinking, control our education system, control our food, control everything. And people don't realize the degree of psychological damage that they're doing to us. Today, a black lady thinks she's not beautiful unless she bleaches her skin and look white. Some will spend thousands of cedis just to put on a white woman's hair because you think that is what beauty is all about. It isn't. The African woman is the most beautiful thing on the planet. I'm telling you. It is a fact. The African woman is the most beautiful thing on the planet Earth. You don't know how beautiful you look. Even the way you behave, the way you talk, your mannerisms, they are unique. Nobody has them. But psychologically, we've been damaged. And sometimes we get really angry when we look at this current stock of African leaders. When we look at the degree of corruption, when we look at the misplaced priorities. Mr. Moderator, give me just 3 more minutes. I want to tell my brothers something. You see, something cuts across all developed countries. And if you set your foot in a country where those things don't exist, then that country is not developed. There is a relationship between a citizen and the state. It is because of this, it's a contract. And because of that contract, that is why when you are born in a country, they give you a birth certificate. The birth certificate is your contract with the state. Now, in all developed countries, if you go there, you will notice something, record keeping. They know when any child is born in that country. And within a matter of weeks, if you die, the country will issue you another certificate to your family, your death certificate. So they know at every given stage the number of people who have passed on. In between the two are the living. Every house in a developed country has an address. Every road in a developed country has a name, even if it's just a path. Isn't it? Yes. If you don't find these things in a country, then it's a shithole country. I'm telling you. It is a shithole country because this is how politicians exploit their citizens. There's no way you can come up with any constructive policies if you don't know the number of people in your country. You have to know. That is why when you are born, they give you the birth certificate. You need that to go to school. So when they're compiling the statistics, the government of Ghana should be able to tell you that in Nsawam, these are the number of people in Nsawam, these are the age parameters. And by estimate, in 10 years' time, the population in terms of children will probably be 1 million. And so we need what? More schools, more nurseries. We need more hospitals. That is how policies are made. But if these things don't exist, then that is how corruption starts. How do you plan the country? How do you plan the development of the country? Because the needs of one community always varies from another one. So these are the things. And I like this topic because it says, what is the role of the youth in the diaspora? Well, let's talk about you and your role in the total liberation of Africa today. Sooner rather than later, you are going to be holding positions of authority. These are the things. The question you should be asking yourself is, what sort of Africa do we want to have? Do you want to go back to the same Africa that has been described as a shithole country? Or do you want to see something different? You are the only people who can effect that change. You are the only people who have had the privilege of studying in foreign countries and have acquired not just academic qualifications, but you've acquired certain experiences, which is unique. You can't get it living in Ghana. It's not possible. So you need to take this knowledge back home. Don't go and be like them. Go and make a difference in the lives of your communities. Because we are so determined. We are turbocharged. Because we think African unification is a human right. It is the right of Pan-Africans. And we are going to see it happen. We are telling African governments, and soon we'll be sending the messages directly. Make it, give your citizens a referendum. Let them decide the sort of federation they want. Let your citizens decide. If you don't, we will force you to do it. We will. Because when we strike, the Arab Spring will be but a joke. The destiny of 1.2 billion people is at stake. We can't allow a group of 55 people to be taken as for granted. What we want is a united Africa. We want a united Africa because it is only in a united Africa can we see proper progress and proper development. It's so painful to hear that in the French colonial countries, they are still paying what we call the colonial debt. Do you know what the colonial debt is? What France is telling its colonies is that we are those who taught you how to use the fork and knife. We have added value to your life, so you have to pay us for that. Can you imagine? And they are paying. A large chunk of their reserves is in France. They can't grow. And I'm telling you, we are not different. Ghanaians are not different from Nigerians. Nigerians are not different from Ivorians. We are just one family, one group of people. The only way to our salvation is not crying in the churches every day. It's African unification. And I swear by the throne of God that even God is on our side. We are working very hard and we are calling you all to throw your weight behind us. I am making one single promise to you. One day, Africa will unite and we shall live to see it happen.